Guys, it's almost that time of year again. And no, I don't mean the holidays, I'm talking about project car season. Over the next couple weeks, I'm gonna be traveling to salvage auctions across the country in hopes we can pick up a few cool projects to rebuild over the winter. Today, it's all about Mopars, including one very special Dodge that makes my Demon look like regular traffic. Yeah, whoever stole this Hellcat, they probably need their thief card revoked. They did a horrific job. It's listed as a theft car. The engine, it looks like they got halfway to taking it out. They disconnected the upper control arms. It seems like they were ready to drop this whole thing down. They just never did it. They took things like the radiator assembly, the air intakes off of it. Judging by that, they might have even left one of their gloves. They ended up taking the fenders, the taillights, not even the center taillight, not the one that's actually expensive. They took the T and the Hellcat logo on the inside. They did just as bad a job, if you can imagine that. They left the side skirts nicely tucked in the car. They took the gauge cluster and the bezel, not the steering wheel, not even all of the center console. How you end up taking all that junk and not the important stuff like the Brembos, like these wheels even, the struts, or the most important part, of course, the engine, I really can't understand it. They did take the headlights, so I guess there's that, but they left the front bumper, the hood. The good part about all this, though, is it might mean we can buy this fairly cheap and have ourselves a really easy time restoring it. Given that so much of the important stuff is still here and not really messed with at all, this is going to be one of the easiest Hellcat rebuilds ever, especially compared to cars we're going to see a little bit later. It's pretty common that we see these cars get stolen and they're recovered in one piece completely if they were just being joyrode. It's either that or they're recovered as nothing more than shells. I'm really curious to see what this ends up selling for at auction. Are people going to be scared away because it is a theft car? Are they going to end up assuming the engine's bad, that it's missing parts if they can't come see it in person like I did? Or are they going to see what I see, a car that got stolen, the thieves were just too dumb to take anything of real value? Now that my Demon's nearing the finish line, I've had the itch to pick up a four-door to complete the Mopar trifecta, if you will. But this thing got absolutely destroyed. This one got whacked. Wow. It looks like they might have hit a telephone pole, a tree, something right here on the driver corner. All that suspension's gone, it's ripped out. The entire upper radiator support, the hood, the fender, the front bumper beam, the radiator assembly, that's all destroyed, but that's the least of our concerns. I think far more important on this car is the fact that this driver strut tower is just shattered. The arm that would normally extend up forward off of it is bent down completely and ripped. This is not an easy fix. But of course, that's never stopped us before. As for the engine, on hits like this, I'm always worried that the engine got hit as well. It doesn't look like it's the case here. The airbox got smashed. It got sent back into this engine cover, but everything else looks good. The belt's still on it, the supercharger, the throttle body, they didn't even get hit. On the passenger side, this frame rail got bent down a good bit as well. The passenger fender, even this upper front frame rail section got damaged a little bit, though not nearly as bad as the driver's side. The passenger front suspension, that wheel, wow. It did its job though and protected the Brembo underneath of it. On the inside, pretty much every airbag except the seat airbags are blown. A lot of times in wrecks like this, the seats themselves will bend. It doesn't look like that's the case here. On the rear of the car, things are looking up, except the passenger rear suspension. That wheel's not supposed to be facing that direction, but the rear quarter, the rear bumper, the trunk, the taillights, the entire rear end, in fact, in phenomenal shape. The back of the driver's side's pretty nice. The front door has a bit of damage, and then if we move any further forward, we completely fall off the cliff. Based on what I'm seeing with this one, this is something I'd normally consider as just a parts car. Front frame rail damage, that's not that big of a deal. That can be fixed fairly easily. Front strut tower shattered, yeah, that's gonna do it. That's a big deal. But as is always the case, it's gonna depend on what it eventually goes for when it runs at auction. If this thing goes for too good of a price to ignore rebuilding it, then that might be what we end up doing. If I was picking my ideal Hellcat to rebuild, it wouldn't be a narrow body, but being that it is four doors and it's a Hellcat, not a Scat Pack, we can't really ignore it. Not only that, the engine bay is really clean. For as disgusting as the outside of this car is, it is really nice. JLT intake that is not really intaking too well anymore. Filters all trashed up. The belt, that is still on, very important. It means nothing got pushed into it, hard enough to throw that. Let's see. Oof. This wrap was covering it up. I didn't quite see how hard this got hit. That got whacked. That's the frame rail, and that is not great. It's supposed to be straight, as you would imagine. It has to be 45 degrees bent. I thought this just got hit in the center, but it looks like it might have got hit on that fender apron too. This looks significantly worse than it did about 30 seconds ago. So using some sense here, which yes, is rare on this channel. It's not wide body, it's hit a little harder than I thought. I think this one would be relegated to a parts car for me. And since I just turned it into a parts car, let's see what we have on the parts front. First and foremost, the drivetrain. There is no reason whatsoever to think that's anything but good. The brakes, always a big money maker on these cars. They look good, that wheel's intact. The entire passenger side of the car, save the fender, is perfectly fine. This rim has some scuffs, but it's not bad by any means. Same deal with the brake back there, that's nice. The rear end, it is minty fresh, except all the dirt. We do have some kind of hilariously big aftermarket exhaust tip. I don't know that that's necessary, but I would be lying if a little part of 16-year-old me didn't think it was at least kind of cool. On the inside, red on red. Probably one of the top 2 color combos you can get in these cars. I love it. The red door panels, believe it or not, these are like $1,000. Same deal with a clean set of red seats, which it does look like these are. At least it doesn't have airbags blown. Of course, every single other airbag in it is blown, but we'll take the wins where we can get them. This really does look like one of the cleanest Hellcats I've ever seen at auction. These cars, more often than not, seem to find themselves in the hands of younger owners. Sometimes they might frequent the center of an intersection. They tend to be pretty beat. This one though, it looks like before it got smashed up, it was really nice. The oil cooler's perfectly intact. This, for me, it's definitely not something I'm gonna fix. If I'm gonna go through all this effort, it's gonna be on the exact car that I want, a wide body one, a red eye possibly. But if it stays under, say, $18,000, even 20, I'd probably be a buyer for parts. At some point at least, this was a beautiful wide body Charger Hellcat, but now it's not looking so hot. Judging by how old some of this stuff is, I'm gonna guess it's been sitting here for quite some time, and there are a lot of reasons why this one isn't particularly high up on the list of ones I'd wanna buy. First and foremost, the oil cooler. It's not ripped off, it is tucked back there, but I would have to guess the lines are either broken or missing completely. Now in this particular car, it's not as big of a deal as some of the other ones because I am positive that this did not start after the wreck. And the reason for that, of course, is I'm pretty sure the engine is what stopped the wreck. This was a brutally hard front dead center hit, and because of that, I'm sure we're gonna have some engine damage to deal with, even if we can't see it because the thing's taped shut. Now let's say theoretically you were willing to do the engine damage repair, you're willing to fix the front frame rails, the hood, the front bumper, the headlights, the whole other host of parts that's completely gone or heavily damaged on this car. What's the rest of it look like? The passenger side doesn't look half bad, I will give it that. The rear of it looks pretty good as well, except for that aftermarket diffuser that is absolutely horrendous, so I'm not sure we can call it damage. This trunk alignment is a bit concerning. The entire driver's side of the car looks pretty good as well. Even the door gaps, somehow, with as hard as that hit was, they're consistent. They look nice. The rear, it's missing one fender flare. The bumper, so it was hit back here just a little bit on the corner. All right, maybe that's not just a little bit, I may have misspoke. You have the rear quarter kind of caved in a little bit. The bumper, that diffuser, oh no, it got damaged. We're gonna have to put a stock one back on it. The spoiler, the taillight. And while this is definitely something to be concerned with, it's by no means an easy fix given the quarter panel's damaged. It is small potatoes compared to the front. On the inside, driver bag blown, passenger bag blown, lower bag blown, no curtains and no seats. The car otherwise looks very clean. I do have to give it up, it is a cool color combo. Blue exterior, peanut butter, if you want to call it that, interior. Not only the condition, but the color combo, that's all really nice. So there is a plus to this car. This one's definitely not going to be the 4-door that I rebuild, but as for a parts car, you have the big brakes, that wheel even looks good. A lot of the body panels, like the doors and the other doors. And the bulk of the parts value on this car is going to be from that awesome interior, the rear suspension, which does look like it's all intact, the Brembo brakes, and whatever we can salvage out of this engine. Which unfortunately I can't quite get a clear picture on. The supercharger's at least still there. Nobody's robbed anything off of it. So we definitely have some value there. It's just not one we can pay top dollar for. That would be a $15,000 or less Hellcat, and I have a strong feeling it's going to sell for more than that. Here at Salvage Auction, it's not too uncommon that we see a Hellcat that got stolen and ends up being no worse for the wear. This is not one of those times. This Hellcat got the Mopar 2-piece. It was stolen and wrecked. Let's hope whoever was on the other end of this crash let Morgan & Morgan, America's largest law firm, go to work for him. Who also, on a completely and utterly coincidental note, happens to be the sponsor of today's video. For me, there's always been some mental barrier around contacting an attorney. It's always seemed like a painfully long and complex process, but thanks to Morgan & Morgan, submitting a claim for an injury has never been easier. No visiting the law office, no long in-person consultation with some lawyer that still has a pager on his hip. We're past that. Morgan & Morgan modernized the injury law process. You can submit case details, sign contracts, and upload documents and medical records right from your phone. You can even text your attorney and legal team with questions about your case. If some non-driver in, say, a orange 350Z with knockoff work wheels smacks you on your way to work because he stayed up all night watching drifting videos on YouTube, contacting a personal injury attorney should be your next step. It's a no-brainer, and it costs you nothing unless they win. Don't overthink it. Take actions to protect your rights. If you're ever injured in an accident, you can submit a claim with Morgan & Morgan in 8 clicks or less at the link in the description or by dialing #law on your phone. That's #529 on your phone. Except for the rear diff way back there peeking at us, the drivetrain is gone. They did, oddly enough, leave some parts of value, some of the fender flares, though they took a portion of it or it was lost in the wreck. The rear wide-body wheels, the Brembos, they're no joke. I don't know that if I was a thief, I would have left those, the trunk, the wide-body rear bumper. About a month ago, I parted out a wide-body Daytona Charger, and these parts are worth money. Even things like the wide-body doors, the side skirts. If you want to see exactly how much that stuff's worth, go check out that video. Yeah, that's a plug. That's a plug. But when it comes to this, it has so much stuff on it that still holds value that I wouldn't be surprised at all if somebody pays good money for this. And of course, by good money on a car like this, I mean like, I don't know, $5 grand. On the inside, bags are blown. Every bag is blown. White interior, I don't see that a lot on these. That might be the first time I've seen that. Kind of a cool spec, white on white, vanilla ice of the Hellcat world. Normally on a car like this that got stolen but was left somewhat intact, I'd be pitching the idea that it was a good builder. Take your drivetrain, put it in a good chassis that somebody didn't abuse too bad. But with this one, missing so much and having frame damage, that frame is like a spaghetti noodle. It's probably the best way I can describe it. I don't know that this is one that I would want to repower, but rather buy and salvage for the rest of the parts. As for what I'd pay for it, 3 to 4 grand, but somebody will almost surely pay more. This next one might be the nicest Hellcat we see all day, a brand new Red Eye Challenger. Most of the damage is really high up on the front end. From a rebuild standpoint, you couldn't draw it up any better. The upper radiator support, in fact, everything you see damaged here is just a bolt-on part. As far as the lower frame rail goes, the bumper beam, the oil cooler, it's all untouched. The hood is taped shut, so we're not going to be able to pop it, but the engine isn't even remotely close to being touched by anything that could hurt it. We're looking at a bumper, hood, fender, headlights, the cooler, some miscellaneous plastics, but no major headaches. I was assuming we find some damage on the rear to explain why they totaled it, but there's just some scratches on the flare and wheel or a rim if you're from the south. Ah, yes, there is the backup camera that's popped out of the spoiler, so add 30 cents in labor to push that back in. Inside, both the driver and passenger bags are blown, but the knee bag and the seat bag stayed in their hole. The curtain bag did blow out. They just cut it so it doesn't look like a VIP builds curtains. Even the driver side of this one's perfect. I'm truly struggling to understand why they totaled it. It's never not going to be tempting to buy a car like this. It's such an easy fix, though it is going to pull a ton of money, rightfully so. But for me, already having the Demon, it just doesn't make any sense for me to buy. I think at this point we've seen every single trashed Hellcat LA has to offer, so it's time to head back east and see how they're treating them out there. Whew. On the list of rebuild candidates, this one is pretty low. This one honestly might be a little harder than my Demon was. I know my roof skin was blown off, but at least the structure was in the relatively right place. This one was swayed over like a foot. Based on that alone, I haven't even looked at the rest of the car yet. I don't know that this is something that you would want to fix, but as is always the case, that doesn't mean it's not going to make a great parts car. But look, before we write it off completely, let's see what else is going on with it. I don't really expect it to get much better. The coolers, even the side heat exchanger, they're completely gone. It just left the one singular in-tank to the heat exchanger. The engine oil cooler, the most important piece, of course, is completely gone, ripped off. It's totally MIA, though in this case it's probably not the worst thing because there's not a chance that this started after the wreck, meaning of course it wasn't ran low on oil pressure. Suspension completely ripped off. The strut's still there. Part of the lower control arm's still there, but the hub, the rotor, the brake caliper, all MIA. The fender, who knows where that went. The door trashed. The mirror kind of survived. Don't ask me how, but from this angle, the roof looks even more gnarly. This was not a fun wreck by any means. The rear suspension, it's definitely not in the right direction, but at least it's there, including the wheel. The wheel itself might, in some way, shape, or form, be fixable, but at the very least, if we turn this into a parts car, we do have a Brembo brake caliper, so there's that, I guess. The only wheel that's even remotely straight, and it looks like it got chewed up by a cougar or something, is this driver rear one. Once again, the Brembo brake caliper in good shape. We have dual wheel locks. That's a first. I guess if you own a Mopar, you really have to go that extra mile just so you don't get it stolen. I don't know how I overlooked that on the other wheels, but yeah, we have the dual wheel lock set up on all three corners of this car. On the inside, I don't think this is going to be pretty. It's already looking pretty rough. The window's been left down. We can't really get too far in there. It's in really rough shape. Somehow the driver airbag didn't go off. The curtain bags went off, clearly. The driver's seat airbag went off. There's a bunch of junk stuffed in the interior. There is some value in there though. Of course, that steering wheel airbag, the steering wheel, the center console, the radio, all that stuff's worth good money at the very least. Even if some of that stuff in there is rough, it needs to be refurbished, whatever, it's there, it's intact, and it's gonna have some value. Let's get on with what's really important here, especially now that we've decided that it's a parts car. All right, it looks much better than the rest of the car. We're off to a good start. Sure, it's dirty. It's definitely been sitting in this lot for quite some time, but otherwise it's perfectly intact. Nothing's been messed with, nothing's stolen, everything's stock, which is a good thing when it comes to Hellcats. A lot of people tend not to modify these in the best way, and when we buy modern ones, they seem to be bagged quite a bit more often than when we buy stock ones. The belts, none of them got thrown, so nothing got pushed into the engine. For as bad as this wreck was, it seems like the drivetrain stayed in one piece. Normally, this is only something I would care about if we were gonna fix the car, but these front frame rails, both sides, they're perfectly straight. For all the damage it took, none of it was in the front end, and because of that, if I was to buy this car, I would hack the front frame rails off just behind these strut towers. I'd sell it along with this front crash bar right here, and last time we did that, we pulled like $1,500 for all three pieces. Or given the fact that we're looking to rebuild one, maybe we could stash these things away and save them for when we get the perfect rebuilder car in. Which is of course one of the things that makes rebuilding these cars just a little bit easier. When we're able to stash parts away, have them on the shelf and ready to go for when we buy that perfect rebuilder, it ultimately lets us put these things back on the road 10 times faster and cheaper. For a parts car, I'm into it, though it does have to be cheap because we don't have the luxury of having a good front end, a bunch of good body panels, a really nice interior. We pretty much just have an engine and some suspension. So on this one, I'd have to be $12,000 to $14,000. I have a feeling it'll sell for more than that. We've only been able to buy a few that cheap ever, but I suppose we'll have to wait a couple weeks till it runs at auction to find out. All right, so this wasn't on my list at all, but I just caught a glimpse of this beautiful, or not so beautiful, orange behemoth over there, and I have kind of always wanted to build a wagon, so let's see if we can go check it out. Oh, this thing is sick. Sick. So I've always wanted an SRT8 one of these to do like a Hellcat swap to, but I guess it doesn't really matter. If we're gonna butcher it up anyway, does it need to be an SRT8? 2007 Dodge Magnum. I didn't even see this when I was looking for cars. Let's see what's under the hood. This one is 100% impromptu, so bear with me because I don't know anything about it. Oh yeah, baby. 5.7 V8. We'd rip that thing out of there so fast it's not even funny. I don't know if my eyes are playing tricks on me, but this looks like really thin rebar. Alrighty then. Looks like it sideswiped something pretty good, though it doesn't have any catastrophic damage. I guess it hit a barrier on the highway, maybe an 18-wheeler's tire, I don't know. Again, the damage isn't too bad. The rim's gone. Quarter panel, though, I guess you could probably fix that. Probably pick doors up for $3 at your local scrapyard. Now, it's been pretty clear this whole time that while I've been trying to find a car to rebuild, we found more parts cars than anything. How funny would it be if the car we didn't even know existed when we started the day was the one we ended up buying to rebuild? Before I bought the SRT10 truck, one of these was really high up on the list to build. So let me know what you guys think. Is this cool, or is this just a dumb idea that should remain an idea and should definitely be left at the scrapyard? I don't know. You know, when I saw this one online, I thought it was going to be a pretty rough wreck. It looked like it was really whacked on this corner. I thought this was much further in. But seeing it at first glance here in person, it really doesn't look that bad. The suspension's not moved that much. I'm sure you'd have to replace this entire corner, but it's not the worst. It's not like the entire wheel got ripped off. The door that got hit, it got pushed back a little bit. But where you'd really worry about this impact would be right there. I was assuming the strut tower is going to be pushed over a bit. It doesn't look moved whatsoever. This upper section. That's swayed just a little bit, but it's certainly much better than this could have been. And on a somewhat unimportant note, I thought this car was black in the pictures. It's actually a really dark blue. I hope it comes across on camera. It's beautiful. The engine bay, exactly as you would imagine in a wreck like this, perfectly intact. We have a JLT intake, otherwise it looks stock. Once again, belt's perfectly intact, nothing got thrown into the engine. The oil cooler. It's behind the bumper, but it's right where it should be. No signs that that got hit. It does look like something made contact with the driver front suspension. It's not supposed to be in that direction, but the driver's side of the car otherwise looks really nice. Even the front bumper looks like it's perfectly intact. I don't know if it got ripped off. Yeah, it just got ripped off the fender. And the headlights, that's back there somewhere. The mounting tabs, I'm sure, are broken. But this front bumper may have survived, which is not the norm for this type of wreck. On the rear quarter panel, we just have some scratches. The rear suspension looks fine. Let's check the rear bumper. It's tight back here. As best I can tell, it's completely untouched. This has to be one of the nicer fixer cars I've seen in quite some time. On the inside, hold on a second. Ooh, we have power. You know what that means? If we have enough power and the engine oil's good, which it definitely is. Oh, this is bad. I can't get it in the hole. There we go. Come on. What I was getting at there, we can start it if it has enough power. That is if we can get in it. It's not pretty, but we're in. The interior, the mirror's hanging off. It blew the passenger bag. That's a shame. Passenger curtain, passenger seat bag are blown. But otherwise, the interior looks like it's in really nice shape. Black Alcantara, center console's nice, the steering wheel's nice. This car can't have that high a mileage. Wow, 82,000. I was way off on that. It's just really well cared for. That's genuinely surprising for a Hellcat. Let's see what she does. Hey, that sounds really good. Really good. We don't have much gas, so we're not gonna let it run for long. I know this is gonna sound weird, but I'm almost kind of jealous. If we could find ourselves a wide body Charger that was in this shape with that light of damage with 80,000 miles, so it would theoretically go somewhat cheap because it's not an 8,000 mile car, I'd be all over it. I really mean it. But being that I definitely don't need another Challenger, I'm gonna hope that one of you guys come and swipe this thing up. I think on that one, the mileage really plays in our favor. If you're rebuilding the car, do you really need it to be low mileage? If anything, it just lowers the price, allows you to get in a little cheaper. I'm thinking anything under 25 grand on that car is a smoking deal. Now in this next little warehouse, the first thing I saw was this stolen red eye that has no keys and is locked shut, so we can't do a single thing with it. Lucky for us though, there are a few more Hellcats here. The first of which ironically also doesn't have keys, but at least it's unlocked so we can check it out. It is pretty much a stock Hellcat. Nothing special here, and yes, we're moving through this one very quickly for a reason. It is completely intact. The interior, tan leather, looks awesome, great, no blown bags. Probably another theft car. This is pretty much the only damage I'm seeing on it. The wrap on the bumper's completely gone, I presume from a burnout, which is actually kind of cool. The back end of the car is pretty much in mint condition, though I think that might be a little off. Maybe that was placed on there wrong. Stolen or not, it's not a bad looking car, but it is a bit hard to focus on this one when we have a minty looking wide body Charger that does have keys sitting right next to it. And yeah, it's not the red key, but at this point, we're gonna take what we can get. Black leather on the inside. Everything in here is really clean. As far as the engine bay, bone stock, no damage that I can see. Everything's where it should be at least. Mileage, 31,000, not bad. Does it start? Please. There we are. I love how that's the first thing that pops up when we start this car. Top speed, recent history, 171 miles an hour. Nice work. I truly mean that. Nice work whoever drove this last. This is another theft car, but at least this time they were courteous enough to leave the keys after they took it for a 171 mile an hour drive. Now I know I said I wanted a wide body Charger project, but this one's really missing the whole project part. And while there are quite a few more cars I'd like to take a look at while I'm here, like this yellow Scat Pack Charger, we have a date with a different yellow Mopar just across town. A 2009 Viper ACR that unfortunately got wrecked on a racetrack. Now, because it's privately owned and not at the salvage auction, out of respect to the owner, I agreed to not go into too much detail unless I'm able to work a deal to buy it. So cross your fingers for me on this one and let me know if it's something you'd want to see me rebuild, or if we should just stick to the plan and get a Charger or maybe that Magnum. Either way, thank you guys so much as always for watching. Until next time.